Lynn was gone, vanished. One day she was emailing about her trip to the mountains, the next, silence. Her emails stopped, her calls went unanswered. Her social media, usually buzzing with updates, fell quiet. For 2 weeks her family clung to hope, but as each day passed, a chilling fear tightened its grip around their hearts. No one knew where she was, only that her last known location was a remote village nestled in the Vietnamese mountains. That's where she was headed, to a guest house called Hon Sung. That's where Hung, her older brother, and a former detective was headed too. The drive was long, each mile marked by a growing unease in Hung's gut. The city's vibrant chaos slowly gave way to the quiet stillness of the countryside. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, as if the mountains themselves were exhaling a sigh laden with secrets. Hung gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles bone white. He had to find Lynn. He had to know she was all right. His heart pounded against his ribs like a war drum, a rhythm of dread echoing the approaching storm clouds above. The road to the village was treacherous, a narrow ribbon of asphalt winding through sheer cliffs and dense forests. The locals Hung asked about Hon Sung were tight-lipped, their eyes darting away as if the name itself carried a curse. They spoke in hushed whispers, their words a jumble of superstition and fear. "Bad place," one old woman muttered, her voice trembling. "Spirits. Angry spirits trapped there." Hung dismissed their warnings as folklore, remnants of a bygone era clinging to the present. But a shiver ran down his spine, a tremor of unease that had nothing to do with the mountain chill. The sun was setting as Hung finally reached the village. A shroud of mist had descended, clinging to the wooden houses like ghostly fingers. The air was heavy with the scent of wood smoke and something else, something ancient and unsettling. He found the guest house at the edge of the village, perched precariously on a hill overlooking a valley shrouded in shadows. Hon Sung was a weathered wooden structure, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin. The windows, dark and vacant, stared back at him like the eyes of a corpse. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the creaking of the building and the rustle of the wind through the trees. A chill wind whipped through the valley, carrying with it the whispers of the forest and the faint scent of decay. Hung took a deep breath, pushing down the rising tide of fear. He had come this far. He wouldn't be deterred by shadows and whispers. A lone figure stood on the porch, silhouetted against the dying light. The woman, her face etched with wrinkles, watched Hung approach with an unsettling intensity. Her eyes, dark and fathomless, seemed to pierce through him, reading his thoughts, his fears. "You've come for the girl," she said, her voice a raspy whisper that seemed to claw its way out of the grave. "They all do." The old woman, introducing herself as Mai, showed Hung to a small, sparsely furnished room. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and dust, as if the room itself had been locked away, untouched for decades. The only window was boarded shut, shrouding the room in a perpetual twilight. Hung tried to question Mai about Lynn, but the old woman remained evasive, her answers shrouded in riddles and warnings. "The mirror," she muttered, her gaze distant and haunted. "It holds them captive, the mirror, and her soul." Sleep offered no escape. Hung tossed and turned on the lumpy mattress, his mind racing with unsettling images and unanswered questions. The silence of the guest house was broken only by the creaking of the building and the distant howling of dogs, their cries echoing through the valley like mournful spirits. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every creak of the floorboard a footstep drawing closer. He was certain he wasn't alone. Section 5. The Mirror. The next morning Hung awoke to a stifling silence. The air hung heavy, charged with an unseen energy. His gut churned with a growing sense of unease. Ignoring the gnawing hunger in his stomach, he began searching, his eyes drawn to every nook and cranny, every shadowed corner of the guest house. He found himself drawn to a room at the end of a cobweb-draped hallway. The door creaked open as if inviting him in, revealing a dusty room bathed in an eerie, ethereal glow. In the center, a large, ornate mirror stood like a sentinel, its surface reflecting nothing but a swirling vortex of shadows. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the cold glass. A jolt shot through his arm, a surge of energy so intense it knocked him to the ground. Images flooded his mind, chaotic and terrifying. He saw faces contorted in fear, heard screams echoing through the void. Then a face emerged from the chaos, a young woman with terrified eyes, Lynn. Section 6. Whispers in the Night. That night the whispers started, faint at first, rustling like leaves in the wind. They swirled around him as he lay in bed. They spoke of betrayal, of a broken heart, of a soul claimed by the mirror and the darkness it held. He sat up, his heart pounding against his ribs. He could feel their presence now, cold and mournful, clinging to him like cobwebs. The air grew frigid, his breath forming clouds in the darkness. He saw them then, flickering forms moving at the edge of his vision, their eyes, burning with a cold, ethereal light, bore into him, their silent pleas for help tearing at his resolve. They were trapped, their souls bound to the mirror, their voices silenced by whatever malevolent force held them captive. And he, drawn here by his sister's disappearance, was somehow connected to their fate. He knew then, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the whispers were not a figment of his imagination. They were real, and they were begging him for help. Section 7. Ba Mai Gung. He sought out Mai, demanding answers. The old woman, her face etched with a lifetime of sorrow, finally relented. She told him the story of her grandmother, Ba Mai Gung, the woman who built Hon Sung. Ba Mai Gung, heartbroken by a lover's betrayal, had made a pact with a dark entity, trading her soul for the power to bind others to the Guesthouse. She used the mirror, a conduit to the spirit world, to trap those who wronged her, their souls left to languish in eternal torment. Over the years, the Guesthouse became a place of whispers and shadows, a prison for the heartbroken and the betrayed. Lynn, drawn to the Guesthouse's dark energy, had become the latest victim, her soul ensnared by the mirror's power. The only way to break the curse, Mai said, her voice trembling, is to destroy the mirror. But be warned, the spirits within will fight to keep their hold on this world. Many have tried and failed, their souls swallowed by the darkness. Section 8. Breaking the Curse. Armed with the truth, Hung knew what he had to do. Ignoring the growing terror clawing at his sanity, he returned to the room with the mirror. The air was thick with anticipation, the whispers reaching a fever pitch. The spirits swirled around him, their forms becoming more distinct, their pleas for release turning into desperate cries. He raised a heavy wooden chair, his muscles screaming in protest, and brought it crashing down on the mirror's surface. A deafening crack echoed through the Guesthouse as the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. A blinding white light erupted from the broken fragments, engulfing the room in an ethereal glow. The air crackled with energy, the floor vibrating beneath his feet. He shielded his eyes, his ears ringing, his body trembling from the force of the blast. Section 9. Vanished. As the light subsided, silence descended upon the Guesthouse. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an unnerving stillness. The whispers were gone. Hung slowly got to his feet, his gaze scanning the room. The mirror was gone, reduced to a pile of glittering dust. In its place, a faint mist lingered in the air, swirling gently before dissipating into nothingness. He stumbled out of the room, his mind reeling, his heart pounding in his chest. He found Mai in the main hall, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief. "They're gone," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The spirits. They're free." They rushed to Lynn's room, but it was empty. The bed was untouched, her belongings gone, she was gone. And so was Hon Sung. When they stepped outside, the guest house was gone, vanished without a trace. The only evidence of its existence was the faint indentation in the earth where the foundation once stood. Hung never saw Lin again, but he held on to the hope that she was safe, her soul finally free from the curse that had haunted Hon Sung for generations.